memasuki sesi panel yang terdiri dari 2 topik. Sesi kali ini akan dipandu langsung oleh Ibu Jen Dwi Apriani, SSMPD, sebagai moderator pada sesi panel 2.
Before we proceed, let us to share a brief profile of our moderator, Ms. Jen Dwi Apriani, SSMPD. Currently served as an English lecturer at Aisyah University Bandung. She completed her master's degree in English education at Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia in 2017 and holds a bachelor's degree in English language and literature from the same university. She has also been active in international academic forums, including presenting her research at the Thailand TESOL International Conference in Bangkok, Thailand. The title, The Use of Dialogue Journal in Teaching Writing.
Sebelum melanjutkan, izinkan kami membacakan sekilas profil beliau. Beliau merupakan dosen bahasa Inggris di Universitas Aisyah Bandung. Beliau menyelesaikan pendidikan Magister Pendidikan Bahasa Inggris di Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia pada tahun 2017, serta gelar sarjana sastra dalam bidang bahasa dan sastra Inggris dari universitas yang sama. Beliau juga aktif dalam forum akademik internasional, di antaranya sebagai pemakalah pada Thailand TESOL International Conference di Bangkok, Thailand, dengan judul penelitian The Use of Dialogue Journal in Teaching Writing.
Without further ado, please join us in welcoming our moderator, Ms. Jen. The floor is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Indra and Raisa. Okay, now, audience, distinguished scholars, esteemed researchers, and fellow students from around the globe, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the International Conference, the 4th UB Inspire, Transforming Cardiovascular Care in the Modern Era, Digital, Preventive, and Holistic Approaches. My name is Jen Dwi Apriani, and it is my privilege to moderate today's academic session. We are deeply honored to host such a diverse gathering of intellects today, and to maintain the academic integrity and clarity of the session, please ensure your microphones remain muted. You are cordially invited to submit your questions in the question and answer chat box throughout the presentation. Distinguished colleagues, it is now my distinct honor to introduce our keynote speaker for today's session, Professor Dr. Emrah Ipek. So Dr. Ipek is a renowned professor of cardiology and currently serves as the Dean of the Faculty of Medicine at Istanbul Nişantaşı University in Turkey. He earned his medical doctorate from Hacettepe University and completed his advanced clinical residency at Atatürk Education and Research Hospital. Throughout his distinguished career, Dr. Ipek has balanced extensive clinical leadership, including serving as chief physician with pioneering research in interventional cardiology, cardiovascular emergencies, and preventive medicine. Beyond his clinical mastery, he is a leading voice in institutional development, driving the integration of artificial intelligence, big data, and virtual reality into contemporary medical education. And please join me in extending a warm scholarly welcome to Professor Dr. Emrah Ipek. Professor, the virtual floor is yours. Professor, will you be sharing your own screen?
Yes. Hello.
Okay,
Good afternoon to all.
Good afternoon.
I am trying to share my. Just a second, please.
All right.
My screen. It's now actually seems to be shared. Okay.
Okay, your audio is clear now,
Can
Professor?
can you see the presentation? No.
Yes.
Okay. Again,
Yes.
I'm gonna share. Okay. Is it okay to you?
Yes, it's clear, Professor?
Can you see the presentation?
Yes. You may proceed.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to be here at the 4th UB Inspire International Conference. My name is Professor Dr. Emrah İpek. I am the Dean of the Faculty of Medicine at Istanbul Nişantaşı University. Today, I will speak on smart wearable technologies and cardiac arrhythmias with a practical focus on early detection, monitoring, and preventive cardiovascular care. The central message here today is simple. Wearables are not valuable because they are fashionable devices. They are valuable when they help us identify rhythm disorders and confirm them safely and connect patients to an evidence-based care pathway. Over the next slides, I will move from technology to clinical evidence, then to guidelines, workflow, limitations, and future directions. Let us proceed with the opening concept. Cardiology is today moving from episodic assessment to continuous cardiovascular awareness. Traditionally, many arrhythmias are evaluated only when the patient is in the clinic or when an ECG happens to capture the event. But arrhythmias are often intermittent, silent, and unpredictable. So, wearables change the timing of clinical entry. The patient may receive an alert before they ever present to a physician. This does not mean that the device replaces clinical judgment. Rather, it changes when and how the patient enters the diagnostic pathway. Our responsibility is to transform that alert into a safe clinical process, confirmation, risk stratification, and prevention. These are the learning objectives today. The audience should be able to explain how different wearable platforms, smartwatches, patches, rings, bands, and textiles detect rhythm abnormalities. And we will also review the strongest current evidence for atrial fibrillation, screening, recurrence monitoring, and AF burden assessment. A key objective is translation also. How should a wearable alert be handled in real clinical practice? Finally, we will discuss limitations, false positives, false negatives, access inequity, privacy, interoperability, data overload, and the still evolving relationship between detection and hard clinical outcomes. Why does this topic matter now? The convergence is clinical, technological, and cultural. Clinically, arrhythmias such as atrial fibrillation are frequently intermittent, and the routine office ECG may miss the relevant episode. Technologically, sensors are already being worn by millions of people before they become patients in our clinics. And artificial intelligence can now process noisy, real-world physiologic signals and convert them into probabilities, alerts, or clinical suggestions. Culturally, patients increasingly expect continuous feedback about their health. Preventive cardiology is therefore shifting from static risk estimation toward continuous risk observation, but that shift must be guided by evidence and clinical governance. This slide summarizes the new rhythm care reality. We now have the possibility of 24-hour, 7 days longitudinal physiological observation outside the clinic. Photoplethysmography PPG provides a passive screening signal, while ECG provides confirmatory electrical documentation when the tracing is interpretable. AF burden adds a quantitative dimension. Instead of asking only whether AF exists, we can ask how much AF present when it occurs and whether it changes after treatment. However, the missing bridge is workflow. The clinical value of wearables is not the sensor alone. It is the pathway from signal to diagnosis to prevention. AF or atrial fibrillation is the flagship use case for wearable rhythm monitoring. It is a common age-related and often asymptomatic or paroxysmal. Its clinical importance is not limited to palpitations. Its clinical importance is not limited to palpitations. AF is associated with stroke, heart failure, cognitive decline, hospitalization, and mortality. Yet detection by itself is not the final goal. Detection becomes clinically meaningful only if it triggers appropriate decisions, such as anticoagulation assessment, risk factor management, symptom-guided rate or rhythm control, and follow-up. The central question is no longer simply, can we detect AF? The more important question is, which patients benefit when we detect it, and what do we do next? Here in this slide, I want to emphasize the full chain from signal to prevention. A sensor first captures the biological signal. An algorithm then interprets it, usually with an ECG qualitative. Only after confirmation, we can move to preventive action, such as anticoagulation assessment, treatment strategy, or risk factor modification. Every step can fail, noise can distort the signal, algorithms can generate false positives, clinicians can be overloaded, systems may not integrate data, and patients may become anxious. A good digital health program must protect every link in this chain. We now enter the technology section. A wearable rhythm monitor is not just a device on the list. It's a complete system, a sensor platform, an algorithm, a patient interface, and a clinical data source. The same hardware can have very different clinical value depending on how the signal is acquired, how the algorithm classifies it, and how the patient receives feedback, and how clinicians review the output. This is why device accuracy studies are only one part of the story. The practical question is whether the entire system can support safe, efficient, and equitable cardiovascular care. Different wearable categories answer different clinical questions. Consumer smartwatches are convenient, scalable, patient-owned, and they usually combine passive PPG with on-demand single-unit ECG. Medical patches provide higher quality continuous ECG over days to weeks and may be more appropriate when diagnostic fidelity is essential. Rings and bands are useful for passive physiologic trends such as sleep, heart rate variability, and pulse irregularity. Textile or chest sensors may support longer duration ECG or cardiovascular monitoring in selected populations. The point is not to choose the universal device, but to match the device to the clinical question. PPG and ECG are complementary. These are not interchangeable. Photoplethysmography is an optical pulse wave signal. It's continuous and passive, which makes it excellent for irregular pulse screening at scale. However, PPG is vulnerable to motion artifact, poor perfusion, skin tone, and device fits and signal quality problems. It's not by itself a definitive rhythm diagnosis. Single lead ECG, on the other hand, records electrical activity and can document atrial fibrillation when the tracing is interpretable and sufficiently long. But it is often user-initiated and provides only a single vector. In practice, PPG raises suspicion, ECG help confirm. Most AF algorithms do not directly see the AF in the human clinical sense. They infer rhythm patterns from signal features. In PPG, the algorithm looks for irregular pulse intervals and loss of consistent periodicity. In ECG, the diagnostic pattern includes RR variability and absence of organized P waves in a comfortable tracing. Before classification, quality filters try to remove motion, poor contact, and indeterminate windows. Machine learning models can detect complex features beyond classical rules, but explainability remains important. Clinicians must understand enough about algorithm behavior to know when to trust, question, or repeat the measurement. This is a wearable data stack. The process begins with a raw biosignal. That signal must undergo noise filtering, then feature extraction. Features are translated into a risk classification or rhythm label, and in clinical programs, there should be some form of human review or clinical triage. The stack is only as strong as its weakest layer. A high-quality algorithm cannot rescue a poor signal. A good signal can still create harm if the pathway generates anxiety or clinical overload. For hospitals and cardiology services, implementation science is therefore as important as engineering. The phrase medical grade requires careful interpretation. Regulatory clearance does not automatically mean clinical outcome benefit. We should distinguish four levels here. Analytical validity asks whether the sensor measures accurately. Clinical validity asks whether the algorithm detects the arrhythmia reliably. Clinical utility asks whether the result improves management or outcomes. Implementation validity asks whether a health system can handle the data safely and sustainably. Many devices may perform well in selected validation settings, but the real test is whether they improve patient care without overwhelming clinicians and widening inequities. We now move to the evidence section. The field has matured significantly. Early wearable studies focus mainly on feasibility and proof of concept. Can a consumer device detect irregular rhythm? More recent evidence, however, includes randomized detection trials, post-ablation monitoring models, AF burden studies, and emergency physiology applications. The main message is balance. Wearables clearly increase rhythm detection, and many may quantify disease activity, but hard outcomes such as stroke prediction or stroke prevention, bleeding avoidance, and cost effectiveness still require stronger evidence in specific populations and workflows. The actual randomized trial, clinical trial, is important because it tested smartwatch screening in a high-risk older population rather than simply supporting device accuracy. In adults aged 65 years or older, 6 months of Apple Watch monitoring increased new AF diagnosis compared with standard care. The hazard ratio was 4.4, and in 21 patients of 219 patients diagnosed in intervention group versus 5 of 218 in standard care. Importantly, more than half of intervention detected AF was asymptomatic. This reinforces the concept that passive monitoring can reveal clinically silent paroxysmal AF that might otherwise remain asymptomatic, undiagnosed. What makes a cool clinically relevant is it is the workflow. This was not just a smartwatch accuracy experiment. The intervention combined passive PPG regulated detection with active single-lead ECG, and an independent e-health team reviewed ECGs within 24 hours. That repeat review is essential because a device alert without clinical interpretation can become either false reassurance or unnecessary alarm. Equal shows that wearable screening can work when embedded in a structured pathway. However, downstream outcome evidence remains necessary. Stroke prevention, bleeding risk, and adherence, cost effectiveness, and health system workload must still be evaluated. The NPJ Digital Medicine 2025 study moves us beyond the binary question of AF detected or not detected. Every Swan AI device was compared with simultaneous 24-hour Holter monitoring and then used for 28-day monitoring. The reported sensitivity and specificity were high, and the longer monitoring period increased AF prevalence compared with a single 24-hour Holter. Importantly, AF burden correlated strongly with Holter-driven burden. This matters because burden may become a key marker of disease activity treatment response and possibly future prevention strategy, although burden-guided treatment is not yet fully established. Post-ablation follow-up in atrial fibrillation is another attractive use case. After ablation, recurrence is often intermittent and asymptomatic, while routine Holter monitoring can miss episodes. Europace 2025 analysis simulated commercial smartwatch algorithms against continuous implantable monitor data. In that model, wearables outperformed common intermittent Holter or patch strategies for recurrent detection, and AF burden correlations with implantable monitor-derived burden were very high. The caveat is important. Simulation assumes adequate wear time and algorithm behavior. Real-world adherence, battery use, patient activation, and data review must be tested prospectively. This slide introduces a necessary caution. Detection is not the same as proven outcome benefit. This is important. Large screening strategies can increase AF diagnosis, but demonstrating a reduction in stroke is much harder. Guard AF, using a 14-day ECG patch, increased AF detection, but did not show a significant reduction in stroke hospitalization in the reported trial. The trial was affected by COVID-era early termination, which reduced statistical power, so the results should not close the question. The clinical message is that wearables should trigger an evidence-based pathway. Detection alone should not be treated as endpoint. The GUARD AF burden analysis helps explain why the response to alerts must be nuanced. Among older adults who returned analyzable 14-day patches, AF was detected in 4.4%. Most cases were paroxysmal and many patients had low AF burden, while a smaller subgroup had multiple hours of AF. This heterogeneity matters. A brief low burden screen detected episode may not carry the same clinical implications as sustained or frequent AF in a high-risk patient. The future of management will likely require combining AF burden with comorbidities, age, symptoms, and stroke risk profile. Wearables are also expanding beyond arrhythmia screening into emergency physiology. The Nature 2025 work on loss of pulse detection illustrates this broader direction. A multimodal model using PPG and motion signals was designed to recognize sudden loss of pulse events while maintaining extremely strict positive constraints. This implication is significant. Consumer wearables may eventually support emergency detection, escalation, and bystander response, but the threshold for implementation must be much higher than for wellness alerts. A false positive emergency alert has social, psychological, and resource consequences. Therefore, validation and governance must be rigorous. The Up to AF 2026 study is provocative because it explores AF burden guided anticoagulation after ablation. In a small single-arm cohort, patients used Apple Watch for 360 days, and an event-triggered anticoagulation strategy substantially reduced DOAC exposure. No thromboembolic or bleeding events were observed. However, this should be interpreted cautiously. The study was small, low risk, and non-randomized. It is a signal-generating study, not practice-changing evidence. The major concept is important, though continuous rhythm monitoring may eventually allow more dynamic prevention strategies than static risk scores alone. REACT-AF is one of the key trials to watch because it directly tests whether continuous variable monitoring can safely individualize anticoagulation. It is a multi-center probe randomized trial in patients with non-permanent AF and low to moderate stroke risk. The comparison is continuous DOAC therapy versus time-delimited DOAC therapy after smartwatch detected AF. Follow-up is planned over several years across many centers. If positive, this could shift part of AF care from static risk score treatment toward dynamic rhythm-guided prevention. If negative, it will also provide crucial boundaries for the use of variable-triggered anticoagulation. We know how to guideline section. We now move to guideline section. Guidelines currently take a cautious but constructive position. Wearables are usable digital tools, but they should function inside established AF care pathways rather than becoming the pathway themselves. The safest stance is to use wearable to support screening, symptom rhythm correlation, recurrence monitoring, and remote follow-up while preserving ECG confirmation, risk-based decision-making, and shared clinical judgment. In other words, the technology can expand the front door of cardiology, but the clinical framework must still determine what happens after the patient enters. The 2024 European Society of Cardiology AF guidelines organize care around the AF care framework. This is a helpful when thinking about wearables. The C reminds us to address comorbidities and risk factors first. Because AF is often a marker of broader cardiometabolic substrate, the A emphasizes avoiding stroke and thromboembolism. The R addresses the rate and rhythm control guided by symptoms and prognosis. The E stresses evaluation and dynamic reassessment over time. Wearables can support each component, but they should not distract from comprehensive patient-centered AF management. The EHRA practical guide provides the operational rule for digital rhythm monitoring. The structure is essential. The PPG-based irregular rhythm alerts should be confirmed by ECG whenever possible. Digital pathways should be integrated into existing AF care workflows rather than creating a parallel, uncontrolled streams of patient data. Patient engagement is necessary, but clinician triage prevents data chaos. Wearables may be particularly useful for remote follow-up, post-ablation rhythm surveillance, and symptom rhythm correlation. The practical message here for services is to define responsibilities before launching a digital monitoring program. The ACC, AHA, and HRS AF guideline position is consistent. Smart devices can prompt evaluation, but diagnosis remains based on clinical confirmation written documentation. Consumer accessible ECGs can be useful when tracing quality is adequate, but a device label alone should not be treated as a final diagnosis. Stroke prevention still depends on validated risk assessment, bleeding risk consideration, and shared decision making. Risk factor modification is also part of AF management, not an optional extra. This guideline stance protects patients from both under-treatment and over-treatment based solely on consumer alerts. The AFNet and ERA consensus perspective reinforces the need for early AF detection, improved victim control when appropriate, and integration of artificial intelligence for risk stratification and AF burden assessment. It also remains aligned with ECG-based confirmation and the 30-second diagnostic threshold in appropriate context. The message is not that wearables should be independent with active care. The message is that digital tools can help identify disease earlier, quantify burden more dynamically, and support the AF care framework when used within a structured clinician-supervised pathway. We now turn from evidence and guidelines to clinical implementation. This is how I would think about building a wearable alert between cardiology service. A wearable alert should not be left inside the patient's anxiety loop with repeated screenshots, internal searches, and uncertainty. It should enter a protocolized pathway within a defined time frame, usually 24 to 72 hours, depending on symptoms and risk. The pathway should specify who receives the data, who reviews it, and when the cardiologist becomes involved and what actions follow confirmation. This is a practical clinical pathway after a wearable AF alert. First, the patient receives the alert. Second, the patient exports ECG strip or relevant device data if available. Third, a nurse or a health team performs triage, checking symptoms, tracing quality and risk profile. Fourth, the cardiologist confirms the rhythm diagnosis or determines that the tracing is artifact or inconclusive. Finally, an AF care plan is created. Comorbidity management and the coagulation assessment rate or rhythm strategy and follow-up. This structured sequence prevents both overreaction and underreaction. Triage determines urgency. Higher priority review is needed when the alert is associated with syncope, chest pain, dyspnea, neurological symptoms, or hemodynamic concern. Fast review is also appropriate for ECG strips compatible with AF, atrial flutter, or wide complex tachycardia, and for patients with structural heart disease, heart failure, stroke, or TIA, or high freight or high thromboembolic risk. Routine review is reasonable for a signal-isolated PPG alert without ECG confirmation. A low-risk patient with a normal confirmatory ECG, a full pulse tracing, or anxiety-driving frequent checks without routine correlation. A wearable report becomes clinical data only when verified and documented. The record should include device type, model, algorithm type, and whether the signal was PPG or ECG. It should document date, time, duration, symptoms, activity context, and tracing quality. The clinician interpretation should be explicit. AF, atrial flutter, supraventricular tachycardia, ectopy, artifact, or inconclusive. Finally, the clinical decision should be recorded, reassurance, repeat monitoring, anticoagulation assessment, routine control, discussion, and risk factor management or emergency referral. Documentation protects both patients' safety and clinical accountability. AF burden is the missing middle layer between a single diagnosis and long-term management. A binary diagnosis, AF yes or no, is often insufficient for modern care. Burden may help monitor recurrence after ablation, evaluate response to antiarrhythmic therapy, or identify disease progression. However, low burden screen detected AF creates uncertainty about stroke risk translation. Burden guided anticoagulation is promising, but still investigational outside selected research context. The likely future model is dynamic risk, atrial substrate, comorbidities, AF burden, symptoms, and clinical context combined with one evolving risk profile. We now move to the challenges section. The same technology that empowers patients can also overload clinicians and amplify anxiety if used without guardrails. Wearables create more data, but more data is not automatically better care. The clinical system must manage false positives, false negatives, inconclusive signals, liability, privacy, and equity. This is where the digital cardiology must become disciplined. The goal is not to collect every possible signal. The goal is to collect clinically meaningful signals and convert them into safe, proportionate action. And accuracy is conditional. Positive predictive value falls when AF prevalence is low, so population selection matters. Motion, poor skin contact, atrophy, tremor, and low perfusion can generate misleading alerts. Single lead ECG may miss atrial activity or misclassify clutter, SVT, or artifact. At the same time, absence of an alert does not exclude intermittent arrhythmia in an asymptomatic patient. The clinical indication is clear. Wearable alert should be interpreted in the context, and and asymptomatic patient may still require conventional diagnostic and monitoring, diagnostic monitoring, even if the device has not detected AF. I am moving to my last slides in a few minutes. Data overload is one of the most important implementation problems. A health system cannot be clinically responsible for unlimited, unfiltered consumer data. A program should specify what patients should send, where they send it, and when it will be reviewed. Nurse-led or e-health reach, automated quality filters, and clear escalation criteria are essential here. Emergency symptoms must be separated from written review. Services should also measure workload. Alerts per patient month, review time, clinical actionability, and patient anxiety. Wearables can reduce barriers, but they can also widen inequities. Device ownership varies by age, income, geography, and digital literacy. Algorithms must be validated across skin tones, comorbidities, languages, and different health systems. A clinical program should not depend only on patients who can purchase premium devices. If digital cardiology becomes available only to affluent digital literate groups, it may amplify existing disparities. A public health strategy requiring reimbursable, accessible, interoperable models and alternatives for patients who do not own consumer wearables. Cardiac rhythm data is not ordinary consumer data, by the way. It is health data, behavioral data, and often location time data. Consent must clearly cover what is collected, shared, stored, reviewed, and acted upon. Clinicians need clarity about liability and expected response times. Interoperability is valuable, but it should not bypass privacy by design principles. Trust requires transparency. Patients should understand device limitations and algorithm updates, data governance, and who has access to their information. Without trust, even technically accurate digital cardiology programs may fail. We now look to the future. Wearables will become less about simply detecting AF, more and more about continuous cardiovascular phenotyping. The future device ecosystem will combine rhythm, activity, sleep, respiration, temperature, blood pressure trends, and perhaps biochemical or hemodynamic signals. Artificial intelligence will convert these streams into phenotypes, AF burden, autonomic dysfunction, functional decline, decompensation risk, and recovery patterns. The promise is earlier, more personalized prevention. The risk is complexity without clinical clarity. The future must therefore be integrated and validated and patient-centered. Next generation wearable cardiology, we rely on multi-sensor fusion, photophylacetymography, ECG, accelerometry, sleep, respiration, temperature, and blood pressure trends may be integrated with electronic health records and remote care teams. AI-driven phenotypes may help identify AF burden, autonomic patterns, early heart failure, decompensation, functional decline, and therapy response. The most powerful model is closed-loop prevention and alert leads to confirmation. Confirmation leads to treatment or behavioral feedback, and subsequent monitoring evaluates response. This is preventive cardiology becoming dynamic rather than episodic. The last slide, take-home messages. Wearables are strongest today for AF screening in selected populations. Symptom rhythm correlation, recurrence monitoring, and AF burden assessment. PPG is a screening signal. ECG confirmation remains central here. Detection improves diagnosis, but outcome benefit depends on patient selection and care pathway. We should avoid both extremes, rejecting wearables as toys or accepting alerts as diagnosis. The most responsible approach is structured digital cardiology, evidence-based, guideline-aligned, equitable, privacy conscious, and clinically actionable. Thank you for your attention. I am ready to take your questions if present. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Ipek. Thank you for the insightful and comprehensive presentation. Your perspective on this matter has certainly given our global academic community much to learn. For all the participants, please continue submitting your questions, in the chat box. Meanwhile, I'm going to read the summary of the presentation that Professor has delivered. So, Professor Dr. Emrah Ipek, MD from Istanbul Nişantaşı University, delivered a lecture regarding how smart wearable technologies are transforming the early detection, monitoring, and clinical workflows of cardiac arrhythmias. And ultimately, the future of digital cardiology points toward multi-sensor fusion platforms that go beyond simple rhythm checks to provide more comprehensive, integrated, and also continuous cardiovascular phenotyping. So let's move on to the question and answer session.
Yeah.
For all the participants.
I am ready.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so participants, if you want to ask in Indonesian, in bahasa Indonesia, you are welcome. Silakan, jika ingin ada yang bertanya kepada Profesor dalam bahasa Indonesia, silakan ditanyakan dan sampaikan di chat box. Or if you want to raise hand, you can also ask questions by
if there is
raising
no
hands.
question, Jane, I can add some clinical, practical, some my experience regarding this wearable technology in my clinical practice.
Okay, please.
I am an interventional cardiologist, both doing practice in clinical cardiology as well. So I am not an interventional arrhythmia professor, but I am clinical arrhythmia professor, and I am also looking to these patients. Some of my patients live in foreign countries like United States, like India, like Africa. All over the world, I have patients. So these wearable technologies, especially these smartwatches, make a great impact in my daily practice. For example, when they have palpitations for an AF atrial fibrillation patient, it gives so many things to me because the patient feels palpitations, open his watch, and take a rhythm strip and send it to me in seconds. This is a very great thing for the humankind, I think, because it gives the chance to reassure patients that you are okay. This is not a palpitation. Just you feel it. This is your emotional thing. We may also reassure patients, or sometimes we may detect some deadly arrhythmias also. One of my patients, I diagnosed atrial fibrillation from United States. One of my Turkish patients living in United States sent me some palpitations. He's over 65 years of age. And when I detect the rhythm strip, okay, yes, this is clearly atrial fibrillation. The RR intervals are irregular, and it is an irregular rhythm. There is no P waves. So I made the diagnosis and I started immediate anticoagulation because of high risk of thromboembolism and stroke. So as doctors, one of first the duty is to prevent diseases before they occur. So atrial fibrillation, in cardiology is a very important arrhythmia. This causes some thromboembolism, some thrombus in the heart, and it may go to brain, and its disability, stroke, a very important issue. So this is a very fabulous technology to use for doctors. One of another patients, I'm going to give an example, a patient with syncope, loss of consciousness. For God's sake, he was wearing his smartwatch during the episode of syncope. Then we have detected some kind of atriovascular block, which necessitates cardiac device implantation, pacemaker implantation. So these technologies are providing continuous feedback to the physicians. But in this presentation, these may also cause over anxiety in the patient, because the data here should be interpreted very in a structured pathway. So the guidelines still require a clinician confirmation for this, and also the clinical confirmation in the clinic with a normal ECG to confirm diagnosis. So the future seems bright in terms of these wearable technologies, but the balancing overestimation and underestimation here, or over anxiety or being too relaxed, we have to be balanced these as humans, because always continuously monitoring myself isn't a good thing as a doctor, so as a human also. So it's important to balance. There's a question here. Thank you for this insightful and up-to-date presentation. I am particularly interested in the clinical workflow you described, especially the triage process after a wearable AFLR. In our practice, we are already seeing patients coming in with smartwatch notifications, and it can be overwhelming. My question is, in your experience, what is the single most important step to rule you would recommend to prevent clinician burnout and patient anxiety, while still ensuring that clinically significant arrhythmias are not missed? Yes, so the guidelines still are in a debate, I think, from this point of view, because we have not still clear pathways to implement these smartwatch technologies in our daily practice. So still research continues, and in my opinion, as per guidelines, as they state, we need some score systems, and not just score systems. We have like health systems that will clearly reduce admissions to the clinicians before after the patient sees the alert in the watch. So these may be may have some development. These may be developed in the near future. So this noisy signals may be reduced by the device, and the assist healthcare system, like ambulance system, emergency healthcare system, the data goes to the triage system. But these are under construction, not in daily practice. So in my opinion, we have to be structured pathway for each country. For example, while you call 112 in Turkey, the ambulance comes to your door. But in case of this overwhelming technology here, the ambulance, before coming to your door, the data should go to the other clinician perhaps, or other AI tool that is there are so many developments and progression are we see nowadays in case of ECG reading by AI technologies, even very similar rates of correct diagnosis with physicians. So as the time passes, in a very, I think in a very near future, we will have this pathways that is constructed to do the work of these smartwatches while they send the data to the physician before they send us. We need structured pathways for it, but there is no official structured pathway for as far as I know. Hello, Dr. Ipek. My name is Mawar. Thank you for the excellent presentation. I have two questions. First, with the rise of consumer wearables, clinics are facing an influx of patients to generate AI, and yes, given the EHRA guidelines on preventing data chaos. How can healthcare systems realistically implement the clinician triage workflow without overwhelming doctors with false positives or clinically insignificant low burden? Yes. Second, regarding the React AI trial, which shifts anticoagulation to a dynamic event trigger, yes. We are too ready to say no, we are not. Or does this pose an unacceptable risk? For yes, yes. So this is a new study, it's an ongoing study. So it's too early to make a comment that okay, stop your anticoagulation and you take it intermittent, like pill in the pocket model. I think we need time to see and we have multiple randomized controlled trials, not one trial, or we have meta-analysis. And I think we have to wait for the second question. We need a time. I don't know the time. It may be 5 years, it may be 1 year, but in my clinical practice, I wait several years when a new treatment comes into the market. I'm waiting that the data accumulates, and then I apply to my patients. So the second drug, we need time to give an intermittent drug strategy, but in some cases, actually, this may have. For example, in patients with very high bleeding risk, multiple intracranial hemorrhage. So if this trial will be positive in the near future, then we may use this strategy in selected patients, not everyone with high risk, high stroke risk. So I like to use, stroke is everything. Using your arm, leg, or speech, our brain is our everything. So we have to protect our central nervous system. So with the second question, I think we need time to make a conclusion. The other data codes, I think we need an AI tool. One of my friends has a study regarding 500,000 ECGs are given to an AI tool. They are training the AI tool, and this will help to make ECG diagnosis in near future. One of my colleagues in Istanbul. We need those kind of training strategies in artificial intelligence training strategies. So when our artificial intelligence tool is enough to understand this data is not important, then the chaos will decrease. I think we need some small time to reach this level.
Okay, Professor, thank you for the explanation. So that was a very interesting presentation, Professor. We would like to open for other questions, but I think that time is not
the time
enough.
is
Yeah.
yes.
So prevent disease before it occurs. Is that right, Professor? Yes.
Yeah.
And
yes.
from the wearables technologies, you can say that as doctors can help many people from all around the world from only one wearable technology. Okay, and it's still and it can connect it, and it's still integrating, and it needs more support system, right, Professor?
Yeah.
It may develop in near future.
Yeah.
Right.
Still are being developing. I think still there's so many trials are ongoing, and we are continuously training the artificial intelligence. And so in a very near future, these are not the problem for clinicians. Probably they will make the correct diagnosis as much as, but solely the the final diagnosis is on the doctor's himself or herself. Yes, because there are so many aspects beyond the scope of this lecture. We may talk in a later conference. So we need a small time, perhaps, to really integrate these variables in our life.
All right. So I wonder about the distance limitation. So there is no limitation in distance. So when you you can wear it like anywhere in the world.
Yeah. This is fascinating, I think.
Okay.
Because most of the patient-doctor relationship is built on the reassurance of your patient. You are okay, don't worry, everything seems good. Oh, doctor, I feel palpitations, I am very anxious, but it's when she or he sends his or her ECG, you see it's not sinus tachycardia, not important. Okay, calm down, this is not a dangerous arrhythmia. This confirmation is still the highest value in I think history of humankind. So this is very important.
Right, that was so incredible, Professor. So to our participants, hopefully, Professor has answered completely all of your curiosity. And thank you, Professor. So before we close the session, we would like to present an appreciation to our esteemed speaker. So now I'm highly honored to invite our organizing committee chairperson, Ibu Endah Yuliani Rahmawati as Cup Nurse M. Cup, to virtually present the certificate of appreciation to Professor Dr. Emrah Ipek. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Jen. Okay, thank you, Professor Dr. Emrah Ipek, for your excellent presentation today.
You're welcome. It was an honor to participate in this session. I look forward for your upcoming events. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. We really appreciate your time and support. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, and let's capture this moment. Screen committee, please display the certificate. Okay. In 3, 2, 1, smile. Perfect. Thank you, Professor and Endah.
Thank you again. You're welcome. See you soon.
See you.
We are waiting you to Istanbul, to our university. We may do collaborations between our institutions.
Certainly.
I think it will be great to host you in Istanbul. Okay.
Certainly, we would love to. We would love to, Professor. Thank you so much. Have
a nice day.
Thank you, and good afternoon from Indonesia.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
So that brings us to the end of our discussion segment. We extend our deepest gratitude to Professor Dr. Emrah Ipek for his invaluable time and exceptional scholarly contribution today. And also finally, thank you to our audience for your rigorous participation. And we wish you all a productive day ahead. And now we look forward to welcoming you to our next session. So before we move to the next session, please give big applause for our next speaker, Professor Dr. Dirk Theodore Ubink, MD, PhD. Distinguished scholars, esteemed researchers, and fellow students from around the world, welcome to the International Conference, the 4th UB Inspire. And for today, we are deeply honored to host such a diverse gathering of intellects today. And it is now my distinct honor to introduce our speaker for today's session. So this is the last sessions for today. The 5th speaker for today is Professor Dr. Dirk Theodore Ubink. So Professor Ubink is a distinguished chair and full professor of evidence-based medicine and shared decision-making at University of Amsterdam. He completed his medical qualifications at the Free University of Amsterdam, holds a PhD from Maastricht University, focusing on microvascular reactivity, and earned an advanced master's degree in clinical epidemiology. And throughout his illustrious academic career, Professor Ubink has served as a principal investigator at the Amsterdam University Medical Center's Department of Surgery and has successfully supervised over 20 PhD candidates. And beyond his extensive pedagogical and institutional leadership, he is a prolific researcher with over 280 scientific publications to his name and an outstanding global citation impact. And today, his insights will guide us through critical intersections of evidence, clinical methodology, and collaborative patient care. And we have 30 minutes for the presentation, 10 minutes for questions, and 5 minutes to present the certificate. And Professor Ubink will be discussing the topic of 8 principles to prevent cardiovascular and other diseases. Please join me in extending a warm scholarly welcome to Professor Dr. Dirk Theodore Ubink. Professor, the virtual floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone there in Bandung. Greetings from Amsterdam, and I'm really pleased to share some ideas about prevention of cardiovascular diseases. But first of all, can you hear me well?
Yes, Professor. Certainly.
Right. Then I'll try to share my screen, which means I can't see you very well anymore, but that doesn't matter.
Yes, it's clear, Professor.
Okay,
you may
great.
Proceed.
All right. Well, thank you again for inviting me to give a lecture on this topic. It's a broad topic, I know, but I think it's really important not only for us as healthcare professionals, but for human beings in general to know some more about prevention of cardiovascular diseases, but also other diseases we are all confronted with during our lives. So it will be a generic talk, not only for patients, not only for healthcare professionals, but for anyone who is taking care of his or her health or of the health of their patients they see and treat. Now, I'd like to divide my presentation in 2 parts. Part 1 is just about the definition of health and share with you 8 principles for a good health. And that is summarized in the acronym New Start. And in the second part, I'll go into more detail about the relation between diet and lifestyle and heart diseases and cancer, and I'll discuss some harmful substances that influence our risk of heart disease and cancer. Now, first of all, if I ask my students, what do you think is health? They usually say, well, I'm not feeling sick, I don't have any complaints, so I must be healthy. And usually that is too narrow, because the World Health Organization has defined health in a much broader sense, in a much more holistic sense, including not only our physical health, but also our mental and social well-being, and not only the absence of any disease or infirmity. So it's a much broader definition, and we should take that into account when we look at our patients, not only as a physical limitation they might present, but also their mental and social well-being is really part of their healthy condition. Now, some general remarks about health and disease that may be very common to you, but I just wanted to stress them still. That is that cardiovascular disease and cancer are really the worldwide #1 diseases and causes of death in the Western world, but I believe also in the Asian world, and I believe also in Indonesia. So we have to take care of those patients because they're so common within our hospitals or care institutions. And we as healthcare professionals are trained and would like to treat patients with a kind of disease, but we tend to neglect the value of prevention, which is at least as important, but unfortunately this receives less attention in our healthcare system. And when we look at how old we can become, we know that it's usually determined by our genes. Somewhere between 20 and 50% of our age we will reach is determined by our genes, but that leaves another 50 to 80% we can influence ourselves, how old we can become and how healthy we can stay. And we know that from large epidemiological studies that there is a relation between dietary habits and lifestyle which help prevent cardiovascular disease, but for many other diseases, chronic diseases, diabetes, hypertension, asthma, but also cancer. So it's really important to focus on what we can do ourselves to prevent any unwanted diseases that are very common in our world. And finally, there's a growing relationship found in many evidence sources between eating animals and the risks it has for our health. We know many diseases among animals some people tend to eat, like cows or swines or chicken, that sometimes suffer from diseases which poses our health at a risk as well. Now I'd like to present to you 8 principles that really helps us, but also our patients, to prevent those nasty diseases we are always dreading and are finding it hard to treat. And that is summarized in the acronym NewStart. And you can find that on the website of newstart.com. I have no interest, no conflict of interest with this organization, but I do use their acronym to show you 8 principles of a healthy diet and lifestyle. And those 8 principles are shown here, which consist of 8 points. And the first one is the N of nutrition, the E of exercise, the W of water, the S of sunlight, the T of temperance, the A of air, the R of rest, and the last one, T of trust. And I'll briefly discuss those items that are really important to prevent diseases and to help having a healthy life. The first one is nutrition. And when we think of nutrition, there's a lot that I could tell, but I have to summarize it, of course. And one of the things that we experience when we see a disturbed nutrition, that can be 3 things. It can be stunting, which means that people are too short for their age. It can be wasting. People are undernourished and are too thin for their height. And obviously they can be too large for their weight, meaning obesity of overweight. Now, overweight is really the largest problem in our Western world, and I dare say that it is becoming more important as well in Asia. And it can be seen already among children. Here you see a picture of children who really are fond of the fast food chains that are everywhere in the world, and that causes overweight very easily. And in Indonesia, I found some numbers as well, that 25% about are suffering from overweight. In 2017, that was. 1 in 11 people are already obese, which is usually the middle-aged persons, and 1 in 9 persons are having underweight. So there's really a nutritional issue here also in Indonesia. Now, you all know that you can calculate your BMI, your body mass index, to get an idea of how your weight status is doing. And you can calculate it by dividing your weight by your height squared in meters. So just an example, when you have a BMI less than 20, we define that as underweight. So for example, if you have a length of 1 meter 60 and you weigh 45 kilos, then your BMI would be about 17.5, meaning that you're underweight. Overweight means that your BMI is above 25. So if you have the same length, 1 meter 60, and you weigh 75 kilos, then your BMI would be 27, meaning slightly overweight. And with that same height, 1.60 meters, and you weigh 85 kilos, then your BMI would be 33, which is really obese. If you find this hard to calculate this BMI, there's also a simpler rule of thumb, which indicates your ideal weight. And you can calculate that by taking your height in centimeters, subtract 100, and subtract another 10%. So if you're 1 meter and 60 centimeters, that means 160 centimeters. You subtract 100, that leaves 60, and you subtract another 10%, leaving 54, which is your ideal weight if you are 1 meter and 60 centimeters. Now for me myself, I'm 1 meter 88. I should subtract 100, that leaves 88. I should subtract another 10%, which leaves 79 kilos for my ideal weight. Well, I'm slightly above that weight. I'm 88 kilos, and that results in a BMI of 24.9, so I'm just within the normal ranges of a normal weight. Now, there's various risks involved in being underweight. You can see them here on the slide. Stunting, I already explained that you don't reach your length for your age. It compromises your brain development, especially in children who need various substances through their nutrition to develop their brains. If you are underweight, you usually have a poor absorption of various nutrients like vitamins, iron for your hemoglobin, calcium for your bones and teeth. It leads to anemia. It leads to a decreased immune function, so you're more prone to get infections. You will have fertility issues like stopping of menstruation. And finally, if you absorb too little calcium, you're prone to get osteoporosis. So underweight has a serious numbers of risks involved. On the other hand, overweight also has various risks involved. You can see them here on the slide. It's diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, cardiovascular diseases, psychosocial problems because your body image has changed to the worse. Various forms of cancer can develop. You can wear out your joints, leading to arthrosis. And if you have a large belly, it will hamper your lungs to expand, so you might experience breathing problems as well. The second point of the New Start principles is exercise. And obviously we're not created to stay behind our desk or to stay on the couch every evening or to spend long hours behind our steering wheel, because we need some physical exercise. And you don't have to be an athlete to get some exercise. It doesn't have to be really a sport. It's just about moving your body regularly. And that means about 30 minutes a day you need exercise, and that can be simple hiking or walking. It can be biking, for example, to your job. So take the bike instead of your motorbike. as I know many people in Indonesia have a motorbike to get somewhere. And really, if you have some exercise, it really improves your fitness, your circulation, your muscle function, your joints, but also your mood, and it also improves your night rest. So it's really important to have that exercise daily, and obviously it's also good against getting overweight. The third item is water. And when I ask my students how many % of your body is water, I give them some options like 20%, 40%, 60%, or 80%. They usually tend to say, well, somewhere between 40 and 60%, but actually it's higher, and perhaps you know that it's about 65% of your body is water. So we need to take care of the water amount of our body to function well. And you know that water is cleansing you in the inside. All waste products are excreted through the urine, and we use water to cleanse our body at the outside, but we need water to transport all kinds of substances, mainly through our blood, through our body, and also we need water to regulate our body temperature, especially when it's very hot. We sweat, or we lose water through our respiration, and that means that we have to replenish our water content by drinking about 1.5 to 2 liters a day, and that is for many people a challenge if they are busy during their daytime to get enough water inside. And obviously, if you do some sporting, you will experience extra water loss. So after you are losing 1.5 liter of water, you will experience a decrease of performance, and your thirst will occur only after losing 1 liter of water. So you should drink before you get thirsty, because already after half a liter you will experience a decrease of performance. And especially if you are fond of endurance sports like marathons or long distance running, you need even more water to replenish your water shortage. The fourth item is the S of sunlight, and really sunlight is a good thing because we need sunlight, and you are fortunate in Indonesia that you have a great country with much sunlight usually, and there are many good aspects of sunlight, especially in countries where you have 4 seasons like the autumn and winter. That's a depressing period of the year, and people get depressed, and so they are fond of sunlight to fight against depression. Secondly, we know that your ultraviolet light is good against bacteria. It decontaminates surfaces and instruments in medical care, so UV is used for that purpose. We know that skin produces vitamin D. We need sunlight for that. We need vitamin D to take in calcium. We need calcium for our bones and for our teeth and for our muscle function. So it's really important to get some sunlight now and then to make sure that you have enough vitamin D for your functioning. And if you do not have enough calcium, you can get serious deformities of your skeleton, as you can see on this picture. So we need to take in enough calcium. And if I ask people, how do you get calcium in your body, then they usually say, well, we need dairy products like milk or yogurt or cheese, etc. But that's not always the best source of calcium you can think of, because phytoestrogens, so the estrogens you can find in plants, are very good against descaling of bone, so the loss of calcium. Especially women in menopause and elderly people need calcium to have strong bones, and if you want to have those phytoestrogens, you better take plant-based calcium sources like beans, soybeans, and flaxseed, which is better than the milk products because the milk products do not contain phytoestrogens. So the soy milk is better for your bones, and I know that especially in Asia and Africa, there's a high level of lactose intolerance. So people there would not drink milk because of their intolerance, and therefore it is better to have those soy products to take in enough calcium. Another issue, of course, of sunlight is the risk of skin cancer. We need vitamin D through sunlight, but we also have to protect ourselves against the sunlight to avoid skin cancer. So we need some sunlight daily, especially in the elderly, and we also know that sunlight helps prevent several cancer types like colon, prostate, and breast cancer, but we need to be careful not to get burnt by the sunlight. But fortunately, at least in our country, in the Netherlands, skin cancer is relatively rare. About 1 in 1,000 people get squamous cell carcinoma, and 1 in 2,000 people get melanoma. So we need sunlight, but we have to protect ourselves against burning through the sunlight. Number 5 is about temperance, and that's a tough one, because temperance is sometimes hard to understand what it is. It's kind of self-control or modesty in what we do and what we eat. And it's nicely defined by this sentence, which means that temperance is abstaining entirely from that which is harmful and using wisely or sparsely that which is good. So we should focus on the good things we should eat or do, and use them wisely, and abstain completely that which is harmful for our bodies. And I know that in Bandung you have lovely food types like the batagor or the types of nasi you can eat. And although it's wonderful to have that as a meal, it's really important to be temperate in that, to make sure that you use that which is good in a not exaggerative manner. And if you know whether you're a Muslim or Christian, there was a test for the first 2 people on earth that they also needed to be temperate. They should not eat from a certain fruit, and that was their first test to learn how to be temperate. So that is still valid for us. And it's not only about food to be temperate, it's only there are other areas in which we should be temperate as well. It should also be in our business. We shouldn't try to get everything out of our business and earn as much money as we can. We should be temperate in our relations, to keep our relations well, and try to be temperate in our anger or our anxieties. We should be temperate in our recreation. Don't lose too much time for recreation. And we should be temperate in earning money. We can gather as much money as we want, but we need to be temperate as well, because it might lead to undesired consequences. And you can think of many other areas in your life where it's important to be temperate. Number 6 is about fresh air. And I usually use this example where I ask my students, how much time can you live without food? And they will think about people who are going on a hunger strike, and they say, well, about 3 to 4 weeks, that will be the max before you can't survive anymore. And then I go on with without drinking. How long can you stay alive without drinking? Well, they say 3 to 4 days, that's the maximum before you will really end your life. And then without air, how long will you survive without air? Well, some people can manage 3 to 4 minutes, but then you will die. So it's really important to have air, to have fresh air, to have a good life. And I know at home most accidents happen, and that might be related to the fresh air we need in our houses, because low oxygen levels makes you drowsy. In our schools for primary and secondary schools, we have CO2 monitors installed to make sure that there is enough oxygen to have a healthy environment for our children at school. Because those poor ventilation, the poor ventilation in some locations not only make you drowsy, but can cause allergy. And as you know, carbon monoxide will sometimes occur when there is incomplete combustion of any heater in that area. So we need fresh air to have a fresh mind. Number 7 is about rest. We all need our daily or nightly rest, I would say, because we need to recover from our work, especially those who are diseased need extra rest to give the body the chance to recover, to recharge. So we need daily time for sleeping. And in general, it's about 7 to 8 hours a night we need to recover from the work we have done. And perhaps you know the English proverb that says, early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy and wise. So it is a common knowledge that we need the rest from our work and things we do during the day. And as you know, in various religions throughout the world, there is one day in the week that is called a day of rest. It can be the Sunday in various Christian religions. It can be the Sabbath on Saturday for other religions like the Jews or Seventh-day Adventists. There's a day in the week that is determined to have a day of rest, which is important to keep ourselves healthy. And you know that if you have insufficient rest, you must be aware that if you are insufficiently rested, you become irritated, or you will lose concentration or efficiency, and it might even cause accidents, especially in traffic situations, because many car accidents happen because the driver falls to sleep, and that is not something you want to be happen. Now let me test you about how much rest you need or you should have, and you can test yourself whether that is the case or not. Because the first test is, will you fall asleep when you sit down for a while? Are you falling asleep now when you're listening to me during this presentation? Then you need some more rest during the nighttime. The second one, do you need an alarm clock to wake up each morning? If you really depend on this alarm clock, you might need some more rest, because you may not need an alarm clock if you wake up in time. And finally, are you sleeping late on days you don't have to work? That is also an indication that you might need some more rest during the night. Finally, trust is an important issue in your health. And whichever your religion is, you may trust in Tuhan, in Allah, in Dewa, whichever God you believe in. It's important to have this trust, because if there is a higher power in your life, then you may know that he who created you knows what you need. And that person can also see and know and do more than you can. So you may trust in that person, so you can let him wrestle with the things you are challenged by in your life. So those 8 items, those principles are really essential in having a good health, not only for the patients we are treating, but also for ourselves in our own lives. Now, before I go on to part 2, in which I will focus more on the details of the relation between diet and health and lifestyle and heart diseases and cancer and some harmful substances. As I told you, the causes of death in the Western world are 2. 1 in 3 of the people will die from a cardiovascular disease, and another 1 out of 3 people will die from cancer. So these are the main issues we are confronted with in this world. Now, if we look at the leading causes of death in Indonesia, there's a nice publication done by Wahab et al. Showing the 30 most frequent causes of death in Indonesia. And you see on the top list is stroke, but other areas with a red rectangle around it are all focusing on cardiovascular disease. So on the top you see the stroke, somewhat lower is the unspecified cardiac diseases, and more low is the acute cardiac disease, which are all belonging to the top 30 of most frequent causes of disease in Indonesia. Apart from that, you have the orange rectangles, which showing the cancer diseases which cause death in Indonesia, which are the reproductive neoplasms, like breast cancer and prostate cancer, but also digestive neoplasms, like colon cancer, and there are other types of cancer, for example, lung cancer, which are also in the top 30 of the list of causes of death in Indonesia. Now, if we look at the risk factors for cardiovascular diseases, we have several risk factors we cannot influence. We cannot influence our genetic predisposition, we cannot influence our race or our gender or our age, but there's a large number of risk factors we can modify ourselves, which are mainly focusing on what we eat and how we live. So all those factors we should focus on to make sure that we can influence the risk factors for cardiovascular diseases. Now, how to prevent cardiovascular diseases? There are lots of things we can do to prevent. Apart from the genes we cannot influence, we can do a lot to prevent cardiovascular diseases. And that mainly involves lifestyle changes. And I know it's hard to change your lifestyle, but really if we think prevention of cardiovascular disease is important, we should also think about lifestyle changes as important. And obviously we have to reduce our stress, because that's one of the major factors of cardiovascular disease. We need to stop smoking. We need the physical exercise as one of the 8 principles I just mentioned. And another is the healthier diet. And there's lots of evidence nowadays that the vegetarian diet based on plants and the oils from the plants are much healthier than the fats we get from animal food, which are usually saturated or containing trans fatty acids, which are much more harmful in terms of the development of cardiovascular disease. Another item that is frequently studied and shown effective is the use of fruit, vegetables, nuts, and bread. And again, I could refer to the experiences of the first people on Earth who also were given a special diet containing fruit, vegetables, grains, and nuts as the ideal diet for mankind. So why not stick to that advice that the first people on Earth already received? And I know many people of you know that this is important, and therefore this slogan that 80% knows this, but that 20% only does this. So we need to change our lifestyle. Although we know it, it also has to change our habits in our lives. The same is true for cancer. Risk factors are very well known. At least half of the cancer cases are caused by an unhealthy lifestyle. 30% of the cancer cases are caused by smoking. About 8% are caused by overweight, and another 15 to 30% are caused by an unhealthy food intake. And some of the factors are well known, like the use of alcohol, the use of high temperature cooked food, using the grill or the barbecue, which changes the food in terms that there are more toxins or produced by overheating the food. So we should be careful about that type of food preparation. Environmental factors, you must know them, because we all know that there's air pollution due to the car exhausts we produce. We produce smoke. When we smoke, not only smoke for ourselves, but also people who inhale that smoke who are not smoking. And sometimes we use asbestos in construction activities, which is also leading to cancers of the mediastinum or the lungs. And finally, sunburn, we discussed that those are also environmental factors influencing the risk of cancer. And specifically for breast cancer, we have lots of evidence, as you can see on the bottom of the slide, where I summarized all the evidence there is about the risk factors for breast cancer, which is the most frequent cancer in women, so we should pay attention to this. And the risk factors known for breast cancer are alcohol drinking, smoking, obesity, and high estrogen intake, which increase those risks for cancer. The same is true for prostate cancer. Many risk factors, well, there are risk factors known, which is mainly smoking. And we also know that to protect against prostate cancer, a vegetarian diet is important, the use of soy milk, and the use of tomatoes, because they contain lycopene, which is thought to be a substance that reduces the risk of prostate cancer. Colon cancer, also a very common disease among many people. There are also many risk factors involved here. As you can see, alcohol, smoking, red meat, refined food, eggs, overweight, all factors that may make you prone for colon cancer. And again, things to counteract this are a vegetarian diet, the use of enough fibers in your diet. Even cabbage is found to lower the risk of colon cancer. And finally, pancreas cancer, a rare disease, but still with a high mortality, is associated with smoking, alcohol, and obesity, and even the presence of diabetes increases the risk. So there are many risk factors involved in many types of cancers, which can be modifiable by our lifestyle and our food intake. So if we are talking about food intake, it's important to try to prevent cancer by using various types of vegetables, and especially are mentioned in the literature are garlic and beans and ginger, and also to vary the types of fruit you have. And you're really lucky in Indonesia to have such a wide range of fruits available, like they're mentioned here: mango, banana, pineapple, mangosteen. Really good fruits to prevent cancer, and to vary those fruits, which even has a stronger effect. And again, I know you may know this, 80% of the people know this, but only 20% really eats this. So we need to improve our promotional campaigns to make sure that people know what is important to have a healthy life and lifestyle. I need to address some of the really important issues. I know smoking is known to you all, that is a bad habit, but still, too many people are still smoking, although we know it's widely, worldwide, a very serious issue. And especially in Indonesia, I've looked up the data here in Indonesia, that the majority of men are smoking, and fortunately only few of the women are smokers. I'm not sure if that's the case also in your city in Bandung, but the problem is still there. There's a large percentage of people who are still smoking, which is really very unhealthy because it's addictive. It has the consequences of psychological dependence. They say it is a moment of relaxation if you take a cigarette, and some people urge you to have a cigarette as well, but it's still a psychological dependence you're generating, apart from the physical dependence through the nicotine that is present in the cigarettes. And you all know the bad effects of smoking. It can cause cancer, it can cause cardiovascular diseases, lung emphysema, etc., etc. And especially is harmful for your baby, not only for your unborn baby, but if you are in the car, you have your baby with you on the back seat, and you're taking a cigarette, that's really a bad habit to have them smoke at the same time when you do that. And apart from that, smoking has a bad smell. It causes pollution of the waste products of the cigarettes in the nature, so it's really not a wise thing to do. So there are many good reasons for stopping smoking. I know that many pregnant women already realize that smoking is bad, so they will stop smoking to take care of their unborn baby. And there are many good reasons to stop, because it gives you more energy, because you get more oxygen rather than nicotine in your lungs. It brightens your teeth, it gives you a fresher breath, it gives you fewer wrinkles and better looking skin, your voice will not crack, and you will cough less. And there are several treatment options for people who are smoking and you want to advise them to stop smoking. And obviously they need another lifestyle, which can be influenced by behavioral cognitive counseling, group training, and various national campaigns. And I'm sure you know that even on your packages of cigarettes, there are warning signs and are ugly pictures depicted to show how harmful smoking is, even if it's nice smelling because of the kretek you have in your cigarettes, but still, it's a bad habit. There are some medicines that might be helpful to support the stopping of smoking. We do not have them in our country, but they have been published or described in the literature as being effective against smoking habits. And finally, there are, of course, nicotine patches that may help change your smoking habit, so it might change your psychological addiction, but still, those patches and also the vaping, the electric cigarettes also contain nicotine, so it still supports your physical dependence, so it's not really helping you off the smoking habit. Another bad habit is alcohol. I know that many Muslim people do not drink alcohol, which is a very good habit, because alcohol damages every organ that it passes when it goes through your body. It damages your throat, your esophagus, your liver, your pancreas, and especially the brain is damaged by the drinking of alcohol in young people, in the teenagers, which in teenagers, when they drink alcohol, it damages the brain cells. So it makes them less smart because they get less and less brain cells if they keep drinking alcohol. And apart from that, you know that alcohol is intoxicating, it's addictive, it reduces good judgment. So already also pregnant women are known to are careful with alcohol because they know that they are at risk of damaging their unborn babies and causing developmental delays if they keep drinking alcohol during their pregnancy. And you may also know that it's related to traffic accidents, but also to domestic violence and to crime. So it's really not something we should advocate. And obviously, you don't want a surgeon who has drunk alcohol. You don't want a pilot who has drunk alcohol or a spouse who drinks, because it has harmful effects, as you all may be aware of. But some people say, well, if you drink 1 or 2 glasses of wine in a day, it promotes your blood circulation. That is partly true, because it's not the wine that causes the improved blood circulation, it's the flavonoids in the wine that dilate the blood vessels and prohibit blood clotting. It's the flavonoids in the grape juice. It's not in the alcohol. So if you want to have flavonoids to promote your blood circulation, you can also get them from vegetables and fruit and even from chocolate. So you don't need alcohol to promote your blood circulation. And an interesting recent report in our country from the Dutch Health Council advised the Minister of Health to discourage the consumption of alcohol because there's no evidence that small amounts of alcohol are really beneficial. So this council advised the minister to denormalize the consumption of alcohol, and this is already happening in our country at least, that people tend to choose the 0% beer and the 0% wine because people are getting more and more aware of the negative effects of alcohol in their diet. And then, as one of the last of my slides, the harmful substances. And you may be surprised by what I'm going to tell you now, because one of the harmful substances that is worldwide known and used is coffee. Coffee is a stimulant. There's no nutritional value in coffee. But we all, at least many people, drink coffee because it stimulates them. And that is true. But if you are stimulated too much, you can also become sleepless. You can get headaches. You can get irritable. You can get a tremor. And you even get depressed. There's evidence about that, about the side effects of coffee. And if you drink 2 mugs a day, it increases your calcium excretion through the urine. So especially in elderly, it increases the risk of hip fractures with about 70%. So that's a really large amount of risk increase, especially for those who are at risk for attracting a hip fracture. Black tea, another thing that is a stimulant and not a nutrient. And especially the young leaves are plucked in the tea industry, but those are the leaves who contain the most toxins, the alkaloids in those leaves. And it's striking to see that the insects and birds tend to avoid those young tea leaves because they apparently know that those leaves are the most toxic. Obviously, you also know that the energy drinks are very harmful because they contain lots of caffeine, but especially taurine, which is again toxic to the adolescent brain. So they really should be avoided. And some other harmful substances are sugar. If you, we tend to eat more sugar than we should, because if you eat more than 25 grams a day, it's harmful because it's leading to overweight, leading to diabetes, It causes caries and cavities in your teeth, and you should be aware of the amount of sugar lumps that there are in a soda or a standard drink like Fanta or Cola. It's already about 10 lumps of sugar in one of those cans or bottles that you get into your body. And finally, salt is also a harmful substance if we use that too much. More than 5 grams a day is harmful for your kidneys and also sustains a high blood pressure. So those are really harmful substances we are not always aware of, that we should be very modest in using them. Finally, I don't want to end my presentation in a negative way, so I would like to ask you, and I can't ask you that personally, but who knows about the blue zones in the world? The blue zones are 5 areas in the world where people live longer and live healthier. And the blue zones are shown in this slide, where you can see that there are 5 areas in the world where people are very healthy, usually get 100 years old or older, and that is from right to left in Okinawa in Japan, in Icaria in Greece, in Sardinia in Italy, in Costa Rica in a place called Nicoya, and in California in the United States, where there is a place called Loma Linda, where there is a religious group, the Seventh-day Adventists, who have a very healthy lifestyle and become older and healthier. And this has been described in a common, well-known magazine, the National Geographic, already over 10 years ago by a man called Dan Buettner, who found out that these areas in the world are living more healthy because they have a healthy lifestyle and look after their diet. And that really is helpful to improve our health, not only in our patients, but also in our own lives. So at the end of this presentation, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I hope that these 8 principles summarized by the New Start acronym will help you to prevent cardiovascular and other diseases, help you to get a better health, but also helps you to improve the quality of care you offer to your patients. Thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Okay, thank you, Professor Ubing, for that profoundly insightful and comprehensive presentation. Okay, Professor, have you ever been to Indonesia before? Because,
yes, I have, but not to Bandung. I've gone to
have...
Surabaya and Bali, but not in the western part of Java.
So you know most of famous Indonesian food?
I know that there's lovely food in Indonesia,
yeah,
so that's
food.
One of the reasons to come to Indonesia. That's right.
Right. So culinary is the one of the reasons you came here, right, Professor? Okay, so thank you. And Professor Ubing outlined how dietary habits and lifestyle choices heavily influence human longevity. And the core framework focuses on the New Start principles, which stands for nutrition, exercise, water, sunlight, temperance, air, rest, and also trust. And the material also highlights the blue zones around the world as the key geographic examples where communities experience exceptional lifespans by naturally practicing the healthy lifestyle habits. And finally, the slides caution against consuming common harmful substances such as cigarettes, excessive amounts of coffee, energy drinks, sugar, salt, and also alcohol. And now, so we shall seamlessly transition into our question and answer session. To our participant, please continue submitting your question in the chat box. But while we are waiting, Professor, while we are waiting for the questions from the participant, can I ask you a question? I would like to ask a question, Professor. one thing that caught my attention is you have mentioned in your presentation that the sunlight can be good against depression. Right. And I would like to know, how does sunlight work to reduce depression? And what about those people living in a cold country, like they get less sunshine? So
yeah, well, in our country, in the Netherlands, we really have 4 seasons. We have a sunny season like it is now, summertime, so there's lots of sun. The environment is warm, it's pleasant to go outside. But when it gets autumn and winter, it's getting cold, and the leaves are dropping from the trees, so it's a barren situation. And the sun is hardly ever seen, so that is really a depressing environment, a depressing period of the year, when people tend to get more depressed because they are fond of the sun, are fond of the warmth, are fond of the nature that is blossoming and growing. So the depression usually goes to a combination of factors like absence of sunlight and a cold climate. So for those people who know that they tend to get depressed in the autumn and winter, go on holiday to a country where there is more sun, and they can counteract that depressive mood.
okay, so thank you for the answer. So does that mean that we as Indonesian people should be happy because we get sunlight every day, Professor?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's right.
Okay, thank you. Now let's check. Do we have questions here?
Yeah, there are lots of
Okay,
questions,
that's
so
yeah,
let me
lots of
try to
questions.
browse through them.
Okay, okay. Thank you for the insightful presentation. Prof. Ubing, may I ask a question? Since some fermented foods, such as tape, may contain alcohol, how should nurses educate patients with cardiovascular conditions who enjoy consuming fermented foods while still respecting their dietary preferences?
Well, as I am a professor of evidence-based medicine, but also of shared decision-making, I would like to, I always advise my students to discuss with their patients what they think is the best thing they can do about their health. And some habits are very hard to change, but other habits, they say, well, I could do something about that. And if you discuss with your patient what risk factor they think is easiest to attack, that is the factor you can start with. So if they are really attached to various food products like fermented foods and they find it very hard to get rid of that, then you could look for other risk factors that seems to be more easy for them to stop or to change. So obviously you cannot change a lifestyle in one day. So you need to discuss with your patient which factors they think are easiest to change in their lives to move towards a better health situation and a better lifestyle.
Okay, noted,
Would that
Professor.
answer the question?
So find the easiest one because we cannot change the lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah, in one
Immediately,
day.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Muhammad Wardiana. I found the material very interesting. In your opinion, how can individuals with heart disease balance their work commitments with a healthy lifestyle? Many people are also consumed by work that they neglect their health, often progressing from having no prior health issues to developing specific conditions, including heart disease.
Yeah, I fully understand the question. I know that as long as we are healthy, we are not very interested in preventing future disease. So as long as we are healthy, we go on with doing all healthy things. We go on with our work. We go on with things that might not be very healthy, but you don't notice it yet, because in another 5 or 10 years you will get the consequences of that. So we need much more education of our population, so general health care or public health care, to make sure that everyone understands that your lifestyle or what you eat or do does influence your health. And you may not experience that tomorrow or next week, but it may have effects on your life in the future, in a couple of years. And that is the most difficult part of our lives, to change our habits so that in the far future we will reap less negative effects of that. So I know that it's hard to confront people with the choice between you need to work because you have to earn your money for your family and for yourself, but on the other hand, you want to have a healthy life. And you can work very hard but get a disease in 5 years, or you can try to avoid stress and overload of your work to be able to live longer and work longer to have a better life. So that's really something we need to become aware of, rather than having a short-sighted view of our lives for the coming days or the coming weeks. So that's really an issue we should be taught about, and what we should discuss with our patients to make clear that they have a choice in their health. And well, that's up to them to decide whether they want a long-term healthy lifestyle or a short-term need for work or income, or those issues that are also important, but in the end may turn against them.
Okay, thank you, Professor. So we need to be aware of the consequences that we might get in 5 years, in the next 5 years or 10 years. Right, okay. So we need to maintain our health from now on. Okay, Professor, I think because of due to the limited time, I think we will read one more question. It's from Retno. Professor, I have a question. In overweight or obese patients, should the success of nutritional intervention be measured primarily by weight loss or by improvement in cardiovascular risk factors, even when significant weight loss is not achieved? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. Obviously, if we try to counteract overweight or obesity, we look at the weight. That's an easy thing to measure. But obviously, you also want to see the other effects of losing weight. That can be a reduction in diabetes. It can be a reduction in cardiovascular risk factors. That's also true and important to measure. So it's the easiest way to measure any interventions to reduce overweight, to put them on the weighting scale. But you fully are right that we should also look at the other risk factors, whether they have a beneficial effect. So you might have a look at the cholesterol levels, or you might have a look at their walking distance or their fitness in general. So I agree fully that we need to have a look at other factors as well, because it's not about the weight only of the patient. It's a more holistic view of risk factors for cardiovascular disease, but also for arthrosis or for diabetes or other possible consequences of overweight or obesity.
Okay, thank you, Professor. So not only because of the weighting scale, right? But we need to know other risk factors like diabetes or cardiovascular. And if we continue unhealthy lifestyle, so we will get the risk. And we need to be more holistic in it, right, Professor? Okay. Right. Thank you, Professor, for the answers. So before we close the session, we would like to present an appreciation to our esteemed speaker. And right now, I'm highly honored to invite the Vice Rector, Dr. Ami Kamila SST MKes, to virtually present the certificate of appreciation to Professor Ubing. Dr. Ami Kamila, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Miss Jane. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Professor Deb. Thank you very much for your valuable contribution to this conference and for inspiring our participants through your presentation. Please accept this certificate as a token of our appreciation for your valuable insight. Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you. It has been a privilege for me to attend and to share things that I think is important for you all.
Okay, thank you. And let us capture this moment. Screen committee, please display. Okay. Smile. 3, 2, 1. All right. Perfect. So thank you, Professor Ubing, one more time. We are waiting. We are welcoming you to coming to Indonesia again.
I would be very happy to do so. I'm sorry for those who have asked a question that we couldn't answer, but
Yes.
perhaps I could do something in the chat later on.
Later, yes, because there are still 3 more questions that have not been answered. Okay. Thank you, participants, for the questions. So that brings us to the end of the discussion segment. And we extend our deepest gratitude to Professor Dr. Ubing for his invaluable time and exceptional scholarly contribution today. And finally, thank you to our global audience for your participation, and we wish you all a productive day ahead. And we'll look forward to welcoming you to our next webinar. Thank you and goodbye. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I will hand it back to the MCs.
Yes. Thank you very much, Miss Jane and our speakers for a very insightful learning material today.
Terima kasih kepada Miss Jin dan para pemateri yang sudah memaparkan materinya yang sungguh luar biasa.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next we will continue quiz session part 2. It will be very fun, right, Raisa?
Yes,
Okay.
alright. Nah, jadi teman-teman semua, tadi kan kita sudah memainkan kuis sesi pertama. Sekarang kita akan memainkan kuis berikutnya pada sesi kedua.
Yes. Mengenai peraturannya seperti apa itu?
Oke, peraturannya kita izin untuk mengulang lagi ya. Peraturannya masih sama seperti kuis sebelumnya. Yang pertama, nanti kami akan menampilkan beberapa pertanyaan. Tentunya soalnya masih sama tentang cardiovascular system. Ada 5 soal. Kemudian peserta akan diberikan waktu untuk menjawab selama 10 detik setelah pertanyaannya sudah dibacakan. Kemudian peserta yang ingin menjawab jangan lupa untuk mengisi jawabannya di kolom chat, hanya abjadnya saja A, B atau C. Dan pemenangnya masih sama. Pemenang akan ada pemenang untuk peserta yang berhasil menjawab dengan benar, tercepat dan juga terbanyak menjawab.
Okay, this will be fun. Okay, Raisa?
Yes.
Are you ready, guys?
Kalau semuanya sudah siap, kita akan memulai sesi kuis
Part
kedua.
2 atau kedua, oke? Kita siap? Kita peregangan dulu ya.
Peregangan dulu, oke? hadirin semua bisa peregangan tangan terlebih dahulu karena ini sangat butuh kecepatan ekstrim ya. Kita butuh kecepatan ekstrim untuk menjawab pertanyaan-pertanyaan berikut. Oke, seperti yang tadi sudah saya bilang, letakkan jemari kalian di keyboard maupun itu laptop ataupun HP. Oke, ready ya guys?
Kita ready, kita mulai saja.
Kita mulai dari 3, 2, 1. Untuk question 1. Nah, which part of the heart receive oxygen pure blood? Oke, udah ada pertanyaannya. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oke, keep jawabannya, jangan ada yang mengetik lagi, cukup. Oke, kita lihat siapa yang paling tercepat menjawabnya terlebih dahulu. Siapa? Tasya. Cut Tasya. Oke ya, yang paling cepat menjawab adalah Cut Tasya. Dan Cut Tasya menjawab pertanyaannya dengan jawaban B.
Kita lihat apakah sudah benar.
Oke, kita lihat jawabannya dalam 3, 2, 1. Jawabannya adalah betul, B.
Luar biasa.
Tepuk tangan buat Cut Tasya.
Kita masuk ke soal nomor 2 ya, ya?
Yes, betul sekali.
Soal nomor 2 adalah, kita hitung. Nah, ini dia.
What valve separate the right atrium from the right ventricle?
What's the answer?
Oke, kita hitung dari 5 aja kali ya, Kang. 5, 4,
3, 2, 1.
Yang paling tercepat siapa? Bagja Ahyat. Oke. Bagja Ahyat menjawab C. Oke, katanya
kita
C.
Cek dulu ya.
Kita cek dulu jawabannya dalam
apakah
3,
sudah benar? 2, 1. Kita lihat apakah betul. Ya.
Betul
luar
sekali.
Biasa.
Tepuk tangan buat Bagja. Namanya sudah Bagja, jawabannya juga Bagja.
Betul sekali.
Oke, kita langsung ke question 3.
Yes.
Kita lanjutkan saja.
Sepertinya sudah cukup panas.
Ya, cukup panas. Ini mah langsung ya. Gak usah dihitung lagi. Langsung aja. Pertanyaannya, boleh dibaca aja lah ya, udah pada tahu. Kita hitung dari 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ding ding ding ding.
Sarjito menjawab C.
Kita lihat apakah sudah benar C. Kita hitung 3, 2, 1. Kita lihat ding ding ding ding ding ding ding ding.
Oke,
luar
betul
biasa
sekali. Mantap ya, ini pada gercep gitu ya menjawabnya. Oke, kita lanjut ke question 4.
Ya.
Kita lanjut. Boleh dibaca aja ya soalnya.
Kita hitung ya. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Oke, kunci jawabannya Andra Putri Utami, dan Andra menjawab A. Apakah benar, Kang Indra?
Kita lihat terlebih dahulu. Dalam hitungan 3, 2, 1. Deng deng deng deng deng. Oke.
Betul sekali jawabannya. Mantap. Dan ini pertanyaan terakhir. Last question. Kita coba. Kita tampilkan pertanyaannya. Oke,
ini pertanyaannya. Wah, luar biasa ini ya.
Kita hitung dari 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oke, jawabannya. Wait, jangan dulu. Tadi siapa yang menjawab? Wendra. Oke, Wendra menjawab apa tadi? B. Dan betul ternyata jawabannya. Oh, keren sekali.
Beri tepuk tangan yang meriah.
Tepuk tangan virtual boleh dong, Akang tetehnya. Oke, kawan-kawan semua, dikarenakan hampir semuanya menjawab benar tentunya ya.
Soalnya udah pinter-pinter ya, Teh.
Iya,
sangat-sangat menguasai materi yang udah disampaikan.
Menguasai materi, betul sekali. Dan yang menjawabnya juga tidak hanya 1 sampai 5 orang, tapi 100 lebih yang menjawabnya.
Hampir merata kekuatan di sini ya.
Yes, betul sekali. Nah, jadi kayaknya kita tambahin lagi aja nggak sih pertanyaannya?
Mau ditambahin nih,
Tambahin deh. Soalnya supaya teman-teman semua masih semangat dan antusias
betul
untuk
sekali.
mendapatkan hadiahnya.
Betul sekali. Kali ini kita akan coba menambah lagi
Yes, betul.
supaya kita mempunyai banyak kesempatan lagi untuk menjawab.
Yes, betul sekali. Karena tadi banyak banget yang mau memenangkan sesi kali ini.
Betul sekali.
Betul sekali.
Karena ada hadiah yang sangat menarik kita ya.
Ya, betul sekali. Oke, teman-teman, mohon ditunggu sebentar karena kita akan lebih membuat soal yang lebih susah
Ya.
tentunya ya. Betul sekali.
Pokoknya nanti kalian harus gercep
Yes.
untuk klik.
Yang dari luar Indonesia juga siap-siap.
Ya.
Mohon maaf kami.
You can choose A, B, or C
Yes, betul.
in the Zoom chat ya.
Yes, betul
Ya.
sekali. Oke, kita tunggu sebentar. Ya, semuanya bersiap-siap
Ya, sambil
dulu saja.
peregangan terlebih
Peregangan
dahulu.
tangan terlebih dahulu. Jadi dua lagi. Dua aja. Oh, udahan. Oh, udah ada. Terus gimana?
Oke, ini terakhir ya, soal terakhir, soal penentu.
Penentu dari para pemenang.
Iya, betul sekali. Kita lihat.
Oke, boleh kawan semua untuk mempersiapkan tangannya
Untuk peregangan terlebih dahulu.
terlebih dahulu.
Karena
Oke.
ini soal terakhir, it's the
Yes,
final.
betul sekali. Nah, kita akan membacakan terlebih dahulu pertanyaannya.
Iya. Lalu kalian nanti siapkan your
Siapkan.
fajr,
Yes.
your jari.
Your fingers, oke? Yes. Oke, kita mulai ya. Hadirin semua,
Are you ready?
kita akan membacakan satu soal terakhir dalam 3, 2, 1. Pertanyaannya adalah which side of the heart pumps blood to the lung? Oke.
Oke.
Yang menjawab kita hitung dari
5,
5,
4, 3, 2, 1.
dan oke, yang tadi menjawab siapa? Yang tercepat? Oke. Yang
kita tunggu.
tercepat tadi jawabannya siapa? Oke. Untuk pemenang ini kejutan. Jadi kita lihat aja dulu jawabannya mungkin ya.
Iya.
Oke, kita
Kita lihat
lihat
terlebih dahulu.
jawabannya dalam 3,
2, 1.
Oke, jawabannya adalah B. Oke, yang menang adalah pada pertanyaan terakhir ini dari jawaban yang benar adalah dari Andra.
Iya, betul
Oke.
sekali. Boleh tepuk tangan
Applause.
akan semua yang
Yes.
masih berada di Zoom.
Oke, hadirin semua, kita sudah melewati banyak sekali acara pada hari ini dan tentunya kita sudah menyelesaikan kuis interaktif sesi kedua yang sungguhnya sangat menyenangkan tentunya ya, dan partisipannya itu sangat aktif juga.
Yeah, alright. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed to the next, we will the presentation session. Let us take a moment to enjoy the poster session showcase prepared by our participants. Please enjoy the presentation.
Baik hadirin semua, acara selanjutnya sambil kita menunggu acara yang paling ditunggu-tunggu, mari kita sejenak menikmati kembali pameran poster yang telah disiapkan oleh para peserta. Para hadirin, selamat menikmati.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of this wonderful event. Before we close today's event, now it's time for the moment you've all been waiting for. The door prize.
Yeay, oke. Hadirin semua, kita sudah memasuki sesi yang ditunggu-tunggu, yaitu pemenang door prize.
Oh yeah.
Oke. Ada yang penasaran siapa jadi pemenangnya?
Please don't go anywhere. You might be the champion of this. Don't go anywhere. Ya, lucu sekali. Ya, please to all participant to on cam. Okay.
Kita lihat dulu nih, sudah on
Ah ya, cukup aja.
kita mulai. Wah, hadiahnya.
Iya.
Oke, bercanda ya. Jadi hadirin sekalian boleh untuk on cam terlebih dahulu supaya bisa wajah pemenang kita namanya.
Iya, betul sekali. Who's the winner today?
Nah, ada banyak
Ah,
sekali.
banyak sekali.
Ya, salah satunya adalah saya.
Oh iya.
Jadi kita ada beberapa kategori pemenang. Salah satunya adalah pemenang kuis, sesi kuis tadi. Kemudian ada peserta dengan pertanyaan terbaik
Oke.
dan peserta teraktif.
Banyak sekali ya nominasinya.
Betul sekali. Nah jadi ayo para hadirin semua, kita ingin melihat wajah para pemenang kita pada kali ini. Jadi boleh seluruh peserta yang hadir untuk mengaktifkan kameranya.
Dan mungkin bisa mengirim emot-emot terbaiknya yang
Yes.
sangat menggambarkan suasana hati pada hari ini ya.
Betul. Boleh dong reaction
Reaction
berikan
ya.
reaction kepada kami. Oke.
Wes.
Ada lagi kurang. Oke, dari Muhammad, dari Deva, dari Yes. Oke.
Sangat luar biasa.
Banyak sekali reaction ya.
It's amazing.
Oke, tanpa berlama-lama lagi,
Iya.
kita langsung saja umumkan kategori pemenang door prize.
Ding ding.
Are you ready, guys?
Are you ready?
Ready sepertinya ya.
Sudah siap sekali ini.
Kita mulai dari kategori mana dulu nih?
Kategori mana ya?
Kategori mana? Yang tadi dulu deh, pemenang kuis sesi
Oke.
1 dan sesi kedua.
Oke.
Boleh ya? Kita umumkan sekarang.
Sekarang aja. Who's the winner tuh?
Nah, baik. Kertas di sini di tangan saya
Oh ya,
yang terdapat nama-nama para pemenang.
Oh iya.
Bisa dilihat. Lihat ya, kelihatan. Oke, sekarang mari kita umumkan pemenang dari kategori pemenang kuis sesi pertama.
Ding. Siapa pemenangnya ya? Sudah siap semuanya? Are you ready? Okay, are you ready guys? Let's give a big round of applause to our winner is
Andra Putri Utami.
Hey! Boleh mungkin untuk on kamera terlebih dahulu?
Mana nih Andra Putri Utami? Boleh buka kamera? Kita lihat wajahnya. Halo Teh Andra. Selamat sebagai pemenang kuis sesi pertama.
Hey, congratulations, Tete.
Kita lanjut terlebih dahulu ya. Nanti kita menyusul Teh Andra. Kita lanjutkan ke kategori berikutnya, yaitu pemenang kuis sesi kedua.
Yay! Who is the winner
Ya,
for session 2?
Oke.
Oke.
Biar gak lama deh.
Are you ready guys?
Ready?
Oke.
Oke. Kita umumkan pemenang dari kategori kuis sesi kedua.
Let's give a big round of applause to our winner is
Wendra
Erlangga Putra. Hey, boleh Kang Wendra untuk on kamera terlebih dahulu? Hey. Kang Wendra. Congratulations Kang Wendra.
Selamat ya telah memenangkan kuis sesi kedua. Oke. Lanjut.
Oke.
Kita akan mengumumkan kategori peserta dengan pertanyaan terbaik.
Oke. Kita masuk ke nominasi selanjutnya ya.
Yes, betul sekali. Dan dengan pertanyaan terbaik ini diambil dari semua sesi pematerian.
Dari semua sesi kita ambil yang paling terbaik.
Betul sekali, karena tadi banyak banget yang nanya. Kita ambil satu yang terbaik. Pertanyaan terbaik.
Oke, kita langsung saja, jangan lama-lama.
Oke, kita mulai dari peserta dengan pertanyaan menarik pada sesi pertama.
Let's give a big round of applause to our winner is
Aib Lilis Kulsu.
Boleh
Tepuk tangan virtual yang meriah. On cam
terlebih dahulu.
Kepada Teh Ail Lilis.
Congratulations. Betul.
Kita langsung lanjut ke pemenang sesi kedua.
Oke.
Sebagai peserta dengan pertanyaan terbaik mungkin ya.
Betul sekali.
Oke,
kita
kita
langsung
umumkan
lanjut saja.
Betul. Kita umumkan pemenang dari kategori peserta dengan pertanyaan terbaik sesi kedua.
Let's give a big round of applause to our winner is Bara Infan Handoko.
Mana nih Bara Infan Handoko?
Boleh on cam terlebih dahulu.
Oh, sepertinya sudah out dari Zoom ya sepertinya. Sepertinya akan hangus.
Iya, sayang sekali.
Sudah tidak apa-apa.
Ya, makanya dari itu akan terus semua harus tetap stay tune.
Yes, betul sekali. Lebar sekali nih hadiahnya. Sayang banget.
Siapa tahu nanti akan terus semua pemenangnya ya.
Yes.
Kita langsung saja masuk ke nominasi berikutnya Teh.
Yes, betul sekali. Nominasi berikutnya adalah peserta dengan pertanyaan terbaik sesi ketiga.
Oke, are you ready guys?
Are you ready guys? Oke, kita umumkan pemenang dari kategori peserta dengan pertanyaan menarik sesi ketiga.
Let's give a big round of applause to our winner is
Sansan Sunandar. Mohon maaf, Sun Sunandar.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Tentunya tidak bersedih karena mendapatkan hadiahnya ya. Oke, terima kasih kepada Pak Sun. Selanjutnya akan kami umumkan peserta dengan pertanyaan menarik sesi keempat.
Siapa nih yang selanjutnya tuh ya?
Wah, penasaran banget nih. Namanya tidak asing nih.
Siapa ya? Tidak asing di insan UNISA sepertinya.
Oke, kita langsung umumkan saja pemenang dari kategori peserta dengan pertanyaan menarik sesi keempat.
Let's give a big round of applause to our winner is Mawar Rahmawati. Ya, saya apakah ada? Oh ya, itu Mawar.
Oke, kita boleh melihat apakah ada
Apakah
teh mawarnya?
Adakah? Masih ada? Ya, sayang sekali
Sayang
itu ya.
sekali, ternyata teh mawarnya tidak ada, maka hadiah tersebut gugur.
Ya.
Oke, hadirin semua, kita langsung saja ke
Nominasi
kategori
selanjutnya.
Yes, betul sekali, yaitu peserta dengan pertanyaan menarik sesi kelima.
Betul sekali. Sudah siap?
Sudah siap?
belum?
Oke, kali ini harus ada ya.
Iya.
Soalnya lebar hadiahnya.
Iya, betul
nih.
sekali. Sangat-sangat menarik hadiahnya. Teh.
Iya, betul sekali. Oke, kita umumkan saja langsung pemenang dari kategori peserta dengan pertanyaan menarik sesi kelima.
Let's give a big round of applause to our winner is Muhammad Wardiana. Oke, boleh on cam terlebih dahulu. Congratulations Kang Muhammad Wardiana.
Oke, terima kasih sudah hadir Muhammad Wardiana. Selanjutnya kita akan mengumumkan peserta terakhir atau kategori terakhir yaitu adalah peserta terpilih.
Wah, ini seperti nominasi Best of the Best itu ya.
Yes, betul sekali. Oke, langsung saja kita umumkannya. Pasti semua orang pada penasaran.
Siapa tahu Anda pemenangnya?
Yes, betul sekali. Langsung saja kita umumkan pemenang dengan kategori peserta teraktif.
Let's give a big round of applause to our winners. Tema Latifus Sutobi.
Oke, Tetera.
Congratulations, Tete.
Terima kasih.
Selamat kepada Tetera telah memenangkan dengan kategori peserta teraktif.
Terima kasih.
Oke, berikut adalah pemenang terbaik pada UB Inspire 2026 kali ini.
Kami ucapkan sekali lagi banyak congratulations, selamat kepada seluruh pemenang yang telah memenangkan seluruh nominasi yang ada di International Conference 2026.
Semoga kemenangan ini dapat menambah semangat dan juga ketekunannya tentunya untuk mengikuti UB Inspire untuk tahun berikutnya.
Betul sekali.
Oke, untuk para pemenang yang tadi sudah kami umumkan, jangan lupa untuk menghubungi panitia untuk mendapatkan door prize-nya.
The committee will contact the winner for the prize.
Yes, betul sekali. Baik hadirin semua, kami izinkan kembali sebelum kita menutup acara pada hari ini. Izin mengingat kembali kepada para peserta untuk mengisi kembali post-test yang telah disediakan oleh panitia. Karena post-test akan berlangsung, karena post-test sudah dibuka dan akan berlangsung sampai 15 menit ke depan. Oh ya, mohon maaf, post-test akan berlangsung sampai jam 11 malam, jadi boleh untuk mengisi post-test segera ya.
Ladies and gentlemen, Alhamdulillah, we are now at the end of the 4th UB Inspire 2026 International Conference.
Bapak Ibu yang kami hormati, Alhamdulillah kita telah tiba di penghujung acara 4th UB Inspire 2026 International Conference.
Hopefully today's conference can bring knowledge, information, and inspiration for us. Thank you to our outstanding speakers and to all the participants for your contribution and enthusiasm.
Semoga acara hari ini dapat memberikan wawasan baru yang menginspirasi kita semua. Terima kasih atas pemateri yang luar biasa dan juga para speakers. Semoga kita bisa bertemu kembali di lain kesempatan.
We are looking forward to seeing you at the oral presentation and poster exhibition on August 13, 2026.
Jangan lupa, besok akan ada oral presentation dan poster exhibition untuk para peserta dan juga pengumuman pemenang poster exhibition tepat pada pukul 11.30. Jadi, pastikan untuk para peserta poster bergabung kembali di esok hari.
Oke. Terima kasih atas kesempatan yang telah diberikan dan mohon maaf jika ada apabila ada salah kata dan ucapan.
And the last for us,
Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.